Welcome to today's webinar. I have the absolute pleasure to introduce JS, Jean-Sébastien Daigle from Quebec, Canada. And today the session is about affinities. And he will introduce the affinity concept, a simple way to understand how individual and enterprise affinities shape conversation, collaboration, and decision making. I'm Wolfgang. I'm one of the founders of Intersection Group, and JS is one of our core team members. I'm only the wingman today, so whenever you have a question, post it to the chat, and I'll keep an eye on the chat. And with that, simply let me hand over to JS, who runs the show today and will tell us everything about affinities, right?
Yeah, thank you. And feel free to write down these questions while I'm doing the webinar. And if Wolfgang feel it's pertinent to just stop me and ask the question right away, you can go ahead, Wolfgang, and stop me and I'll answer some of these questions. So let me check my setting. Is it working? Here we go. The slides are changing. Okay, so just a little bit about me. So I'm mostly a facilitator. So I do a lot of workshop, and based on these workshop where we usually try to do either like digital transformation, have better experience for the clients of our clients, or maybe we try to do some organizational transformation. We do this workshop in order like to clarify a bit of everything. So I'm pretty much what I would consider an enterprise designer, at least for the last couple of years. I come from design, so I am pretty good with the visual stuff. And this is probably what made me interested mostly in the intersection group, energy, and all that visual language in order to connect a little bit of everybody in what we're doing. So just quickly, like I said, I do a lot of workshops and sprints to align people with effectiveness. Based on these workshops, there's a good part of the work that is usually tend to go towards the research and analysis phases afterwards. So I need to figure out based on the strategy, what we're aiming for, how are we going to transform businesses, like all these processes are they going to work with everybody. So I talk to a lot of people and I'm doing all these analysis and research stuff. And also I'm doing a lot of conference and training. Inside businesses and outside businesses, mostly because, yeah, if you have an idea with your team and with your clients, and if your research is good at some point, like you need to leave and people need to be able to continue what they were doing or that transformation before, after I leave. So there's a good training part in what I'm doing. And quickly, so yeah, strategy, sprint, audit, a bunch of stuff I did with all these clients. You might not know all of them because they are mostly in the Quebec, Montreal region, but there are some museums, some electricity businesses, pharmacies, insurance, telecommunication, and TV channel, and most of them are doing innovation of some sort. Electricity, yeah, thank you for Maxim in the chat. You're into the electricity business, I figured. Okay, so let's go on. Enough about me and what I'm doing. Let's move on with these affinities. So what are affinities and where do they actually come from? So just a quick story of my mindset about all these enterprise design and facilitation and workshop. I think that we have some sort of, in every business, these what I call the ivory Jenga tower Babel problem, where all businesses have a different problem. Like we have multiple disciplines that work in silos that are all expert in their field, but we always have some sort of the same problem where when we change something into an enterprise, thing might fall apart, or you might break another team's job silos, or there might be some problem when you change stuff that is hard to manage. There's the ivory tower where people at the top sometimes take decision without considering the work. the real work or how stuff work for real. But I mean, sometimes there's some distance between work and decision. And there's the Babel Tower, which comes from an old metaphor, an old story, which people actually don't speak the same language, so it's hard for them to build something together when they don't understand one another. So, to me, edgy enterprise design workshop, it's all about good communication equal good effectiveness. And the better your communication, the more effective your enterprise can be. Just as a just to make sure everybody's on the same page, because I'm not sure if everybody knows about edgy and how they are familiar with it. I'll just repeat the mental model. The reference we're using in edgy and enterprise design, or at least one of them, is edgy, where we try to see the organization and the enterprise from different facets and their intersections. So it's identity, organization, architecture, we have the product, the experience, and the brand. I'll give you a sec to read all those things. But that's been pretty much my to-go reference for every workshop or every transformation that I've used on the past. Well, I think it was out in 2022, 2023 or something. It's been part of every project because it really helps with the Ivory Jenga Babel Tower problem that I just talked about. It helps people understand one another. So yeah, there's a bit of these stereotypes that are aligned with that model, usually, when we're using it, where when we go into the identity parts and we try to see our enterprises or our project from that lens, usually, yeah, it's all about who are we, why are we doing this, why is it important? So usually it's more like executive officer or CEOs are on that branch. There are, of course, the human resources, like, okay, if we have a problem or a project, like they're always talking about, like, we need to train the employees, we need to be more efficient by creating different teams, or we have the architecture side. Yeah, okay, so we need to optimize our infrastructure, our processes. And while we are doing this with our clients, we started seeing those patterns. People from different disciplines always come up with the same mindset ideas, or there were some patterns, strong patterns here and there. As for myself, I come from design, and people from user experience always tend to be user-centric. But we also need to think about the feasibility and the strategy, which is not natural for the discipline I come from usually. So it's a stereotype, but it exists. It's there. So also, big exaggeration. Take it with a grain of salt. People on the identity are more political, so to change, or protective. So these are negative sides. You can agree or disagree on them. Yeah, sometimes IT people more technical, more rigid, more on how things should work. The designer are more on the emotional, the user side, user first. The branding people on the narrative. How do we look like? And yeah, people from product, yeah, it's about feature, quality, what do we deliver to the people? So their perspective are different, but we all work in the same enterprise and usually have the same goal. So it's based on these stereotypes that I figured at some point, well, if there's stereotypes and I can see pattern, well, there's probably human behavior. And when there's human behavior, there are things to understand in order to make better workshop, better collaboration, and like to move forward and to make sense of what's happening usually when we try to collaborate. So I did a little bit of research and figured out, okay, so yeah, is there something already, what does exist already on these these field of human behaviors that might match what I'm trying to spot or to accomplish. So one of the things that I checked that does exist, there's the Nova profile that you might have heard. There's okay, so the Nova profile, it's how people prefer to behave and communicate when making decisions. So in a lot of workshops, some of my clients, like we're talking, and say, "Oh, you're more of a blue kind of people, or you're more like a yellow one." I was like, "What are you talking about?" So with the model, usually there's some science behind. There are actually people that can figure out with lots of question and the psychology behind it, like figure out what are your behavior, how do you like to work, to collaborate, are you more action oriented, are you trying to decide, or are you the kind of person that try to say, oh, let's vote on this, is this a democracy, are you trying to make peace with everyone, or are you the one who's challenging everyone? Do you like things to be more free form or more structure with step by step? And I mean, whatever you're in any of these categories, like it's not good or bad, it's just who you are and how we interact with other people from different colors. So I found it that it was pretty interesting to have some word to acknowledge who we are and what triggers us and what helps us be better. So I check on this one. There's also the Myers-Briggs that there's a little bit more. I wouldn't say complex, but I like it's you do these kind of tests and you can figure out. They made 16 personality types. Well, there's probably more than that, and it's more complex. It does give us a sense of who we are and how we interact, and give us some clues on ourselves. So it's the introvert, extrovert, sensory, intuitive, thinker, feeler, judgmental, perceptive, which is kind of interesting of doing these small tests and say, okay, where do I stand with all of these, like, and what feels like me? And this one is very fun because they also compare us to either like actors, scientists, political figures, so we can have that feel. Yeah, I'm like more of a Tony Stark or Albert Einstein or Barack Obama kind of stuff. So it's kind of easier to memorize, like who you feel like you are. So pretty interesting. Okay, so we move forward. So I start with the idea that all models are wrong, but some are useful, just like the Nova or the 16 personalities. I mean, these are to give us a sense of who we are and how we behave, but it's never really 100% who we are, but it can help us. So I check these model and say, how does it work if we try to replicate these things into the edgy model? So I will start with the people affinity in that case. So the people affinity is what I feel like it's the natural inclination, strength, and preferences toward a specific aspect of the organizations. I'll start with the easiest one for me. Most people that are in expert in user experience or client experience or service or user research, customer experience, really tend to put themselves more on the experience side. Software engineer, enterprise architect, data architect, or more tend to say, oh, I'm on the blue one in our case. Founders, visionary, people that do a lot of presentation, visionary speech and everything, tends to be more on the identity side. So these are the affinity base per job, per role that we have. And this is where I think, for what I've been able to test and document throughout the last couple of years, is that we do put ourselves and we do recognize ourselves in that model based on our role, but our role, it's not actually our affinities. And this is where I think, to me, it gets very interesting. So So I'm gonna go into a bit of a storytelling mode here. I've been doing this exercise for people, with people in my workshop, asking them, okay, where do you feel you stand on identity, organization, and all these facets? They usually tend to put themselves either like on what their role is, but I could sense that it was not 100% of the truth. So usually people say, okay, so put yourself where you feel you stand. Then, okay, I'm an architect. Okay, right, that's good. But do you have some impact elsewhere? Do you think about the products? And of course, I'm leading that initiative. So you architect and product. Makes sense? It's part of the same big circle. But how much do you think about the experience of, yeah, well, kind of a little bit. So we can see that while talking with people, they felt like they belonged in more than a single place. And based on this, they could acknowledge that they are starting to have some sort of a holistic vision. They can be part of many things, have many perspective on the same problem, the same project, or the same objective. Instead of siloing ourselves into this model, they were starting to realize they could have that collective holistic thinking a bit more. And at some point, someone said, yeah, well, it would be weird to put myself in the middle and say, I know all of these things. But I think that it was an interesting question, or an interesting thought that I have, that maybe we cannot be in everywhere, but maybe we can try to aim for the middle, and knowing consciously that we will never master everything, but we can think about all of those things. So that made me think and reflect on my own career for the last 20 years, and where I stand right now, to try to identify what is my actual real affinity personally and now. So like I said, I studied design. I started as an art director. I was doing branding, magazine, packaging, and stuff like that. So I'm an art kind of guy. And then the internet came. I moved to UX. I was doing websites because there's not a lot of art directors that were doing great job with the website part. But then I started doing workshop and innovation, and started creating new product and try to innovate with my clients. So I pretty much became someone that were thinking of the product and new product and how it can bring values and figure out all those things. But then every new product need to land and to be part of processes, and you need to manage your assets, and you need to figure out how are you going to do it. So then I started doing these digital transformation and doing more of the architecture part. But then these need to work in a real life context with real human and real teams, and figure out how you're going to transform your teams in order to do that new transformation. But then all of those things need to work on a strategic level and identity. So in order for everything to work, people need to be convinced, and you need to go to the identity, purpose kind of side of the story to make everything change. So that's pretty much my story, but based on what I've told, I was trying to figure out what is my current affinity as someone that started in art and then moved towards architecture to reorganization and strategy thing. And right now, based on my behavior, and this is where I think it also gets interesting, it's not my role that tells what is my affinity, it's my behavior. Right now, as a person, most of my work as an entrepreneur, most of my work is mapping, auditing large system on the enterprise level. And I'm pretty much it means that I'm on the architecture and organization part most of the time. So what I studied my title, my role is not my affinity. I always been a designer that had an approach that is more grid-based, mathematical. And with all those stories combined, now I can say that I'm actually kind of more of an architect than an artist. I do think about the user experience and their need, but to me, where I get in my comfort zone is to try to make these experience streamline, work with the processes. So I'm pretty much now more of an architect than user research and thinking more about the feeling. But I think about all of those things, but behavior wise, I'm more on, these are more of my current affinities. So about that center part, like I said, so I told you my stories, I'm a bit everywhere. It might not be for everyone, but I think aiming for the middle, even though we won't have that kind of experience everywhere, is still something that we should try for if you're interested in enterprise design, because it gives you those perspective and it will enable your own affinity to be more powerful, because you'll be able to judge different aspects of the enterprise better. That's a weird part that I also realized while doing this workshop is now in my community, my local community in Quebec and Montreal, I'm not a designer anymore for people, because for them they don't see my work as art direction and user experience. They see me as some weirdos that is doing architecture. And the other thing, I think, and this will be might be an interesting conversation to have. I think that to architect, I will never truly be an architect, because I don't come from that field. I don't come from the part where I studied some other language like Archimate or the other one that just I don't know. I do am able to work my way to this kind of architectural thinking with edgy in my background, but something are got left behind. And the comparison that I had is, it's like changing countries. When you move to other countries and you have a thick accent, you become a citizen of somewhere, but to peoples, they can recognize you're not native from that place. But when you go to another country, they can still feel that you have a different culture. So I'm saying that way. So having a role outside the affinity may be an advantage. Innovation, and when you're trying to figure out new ideas and solve new problems, come from the better ideas come from a diverse crowd with different perspective and different backgrounds. So I do acknowledge I'm a weird one for a lot of people, but I am totally fine with that. And I think it is an advantage to have that knowledge about where you stand, and if your role does not match your own affinity, how can you use it as an advantage? Now, what are the enterprise affinities? You'll see at the end, everything gets connected with the people and enterprise affinities in an interesting way. So let's move to enterprise now. Enterprise affinities is usually linked to the core element that define an organization, what drives them, what is part of the core of their strategy, their strongest point. Usually when your affinity is on the identity side, you have strong belief in values. When it's on the organization's side, it's more on, yeah, you have strong values of your people, and now you use them and you work with them in order to create value for your business. On the architecture part, it's more on your internal capabilities, whether it's a technological or an IT, or it might be a human based. So some of you people have strong capabilities that are strategically different from your competitors. Same goes for the product. You have good product, better product services, or you either deliver a better user experience, client experience, or employee experience. Or on the brand side, you have some strong perceived good perception of your brand. Let me show you some example here. So I did the tests and figured out a few companies that their affinities seems to what I know, or to me at least, are strong. So there's Patagonia on the identity, which I think is a strong have a strong affinity in the identity. On the organization side, I think it's more McKinsey, KPMG, Deloitte, all these big businesses that do have their employee, and then they are trying to help other businesses by giving them some human resources here and there. On the architecture side, you OpenAI. On the product side, I took Apple. On the experience side, I have Le Cirque du Soleil. If you don't know, it's a worldwide famous circus that was created in Montreal. And on the brand side, I chose Chanel. So the way I figured this out is that what is the one thing they cannot change without changing the whole enterprise? So I put it on the negative side on the left of the slide. So Patagonia is known, has been known lately for saying, okay, so when the owner is going to pass the torch, the profit is going to go to the nature, and the environment is going to be the owner of the of Patagonia. So I can't remember the right word, but it's a really, really strong affinity towards their values, which is having good product, but that are good for the environment. So if we say, well, okay, imagine Patagonia that changed their identity from environmentally friendly approach from growth at all costs. That would change the whole strategy, but probably the business would fail. Let's say OpenAI said, okay, we stopped working on AI, and now we change our approach for mental health and human connection. So no more computer stuff, just human trying to figure out one another without technology. Does not really make sense. Or I put Apple on the product because let's imagine Apple, if they switch their strategy to be like to do washing machine like Samsung does. It's a different game, it's a different strategy, it's a different approach. Even for let's say Chanel, which is a brand of leather purse and bags, and they are probably doing other things. They can change their architecture, where their product gets made. They can change the staff, the way they work. They can change their product. It can be bags, it can be other types of clothes. But if they change the logo, there will be drama. It's like something they cannot change, and they should not change. And some of these big businesses like do protect more their logos and have multiple affinities, but we can see that enterprise have a tendency to have something sacred in them that if they change it, it's just not the same business. Okay. So yeah, just like people, enterprise, I think they can change over time. We as humans change over time. We have different contexts. Life happen around the world. There are, economic crisis, or there are pandemics and stuff that make us change. And over time, also our priority change, whether we're 20 or 50 years old. And I think businesses do change over time. If they don't change, what can happen, and they don't acknowledge that and their affinity and how they can prioritize their strategy, they might end up like Kodak or Blockbuster or BlackBerry or some other that change. For instance, Kodak, which is a famous case study. Yeah, they used to sell Kodak and sell film for their cameras, but they were the first one to have the digital camera patterns, and they say no, we will stick to selling films because this is what we make. This is the money we make out of it. So at some point the patterns end up. People starting doing digital camera, and then they die. Funny thing, Kodak as a brand still exists, but the company died. So someone actually bought the brand to do something else with it. So they pretty much killed their enterprise and their architecture and their strategy. But now the only thing that left is the brand, and it's used elsewhere. So yeah, enterprise can change based on the context. They can evolve, but it needs to be conscious, and they need to acknowledge their context. So how does it all connect? On one side, we have the people affinity, so how we behave, what triggers us, how do we see ourselves. And on the other side is how enterprise behave, how do they make decision, and how they work, and what might be the most important part of their strategy based on the AG model, of course. I think that it's kind of all connected, because we as people, if you want to succeed, or as an enterprise, if the enterprise want to succeed, we both need to acknowledge like whom we put in place in which field. Do we have that diversity, and do people understand who they are and how they act on the enterprise, and what is their values? And the enterprise also need to know who they are, and how as an enterprise, what is core, what is sacred. So, and when you mix those two together, it's easier for people to figure out, okay, am I core to the enterprise? Are decisions made based on my expertise in my work, or am I supporting something else elsewhere on the enterprise? And I wrote it down. I think it's important to understand that part, because it's part of also my story. I used to be in a business where IT people were 80% of the business, and designer was 10% of the business. And I was kind of always like, kind of angry, like, why are they always thinking about the others and not me? Well, the fact is that business was architecture based, and I was experience based, and I was supposed to be there to support the IT people, because this is what was driving the business, the IT part. I was a support guy, and I wanted to be a lead. But not everybody can lead. Not everybody can be the core. And this is where we're not all Wayne Gretzky's, Ronaldo, or Tom Brady's, and it's totally fine. If you want this kind of role and be core, you need to find an enterprise where the core is what you want, where you want to be. So it's both like these kind of balance. As an enterprise, you better find people that understand these relationship, and are they core or are they support? And to me, yeah, it's about good enterprise. But while I was doing this webinar and these theories, and the more I moved towards these kind of reflection and thought, I said it's more about self-awareness, effectiveness, fulfillment, but most of all, it's mostly about being happy, and the happiness part. If you know who you are, if the enterprise knows itself, it knows how to behave, how to design itself, well, then it becomes a conscious choice of, hey, am I happy here? Should I stay here? Or maybe I'll be happier elsewhere. But in order to make these conscious decisions, you need to both know who you are, and the business need to understand itself. And I think it's one of the powerful thing about AG model. In a simple way, we can try to connect the people and the enterprise affinities, and make something that is more grounded than just understanding who am I, like the Nova profiler or the 16 personalities, but it's linking them together because it's the same base, it's the same model that try to connect everything together. So is it science? No, it's not science. It's not science. It's based on, like I said, pattern, human behavior that I started documented slowly but surely throughout the last couple of years, and having that feeling that there are patterns. So no, it's not like I said, it's not science, but like I said, every model are wrong, some are useful. To me, it's been pretty useful. So where I'm at right now is that, yeah, it's mostly qualitative research. Ask question to people: how do they feel? Where do they fit? Do they think like they belong in another place? And I can see even in my own practice or my peers as a designer, some designers are very more on the brand side, and some are very more aligned on the architectural side. So even in profession, I can see it, and I can see the career path that are widely different based on these. Eventually, I would like to take this knowledge and to structure it better than what I am at so far, and maybe make it more quantitative and see is that theory more applied in can be more applied elsewhere, or can be more precise or closer to what the other model that had psychology behind it. Can we make something more valuable to help us understand better the enterprise and oneself? So I leave you with an open question. That's pretty much my conclusion. Based on what you've learned today, what do you think is your natural affinity, which is not your role, but where you think you belong based on your behavior, which is a bit tricky to nail down at first? And where do you think your enterprise land on the enterprise affinity part? Is this a single affinity? Which one is the strongest one? What is the biggest decision-making facet do you think is used in your enterprise that you're currently in? And yeah, so that's it, and that's a thank you. I'm open for questions now. So of course it's a webinar, so we'll have a few seconds before people start typing, and if you start having questions or someone is typing. Wolfgang, what have you learned today?
I think my affinity is constantly changing. So where I started is very different from where I'm now. So it's moving, and I think that's important.
So you clearly, based on your role, you started from architecture, but where do you feel you're moving towards to?
I think it's close. It's in the identity and between identity organization. So that's what fascinates me. But you can't really separate it. Yeah, of course there is affinity always, but it's not strict, I would say.
No, I think it's like I said, all those other profiler, the Nova or the 16 personalities, it's not a you're either in one or another. It's more like a okay, you're 20% here, 40% there, and it's a gradation. But it gives us a clue and perspective. So when you're trying to solve a problem, I think, or to figure out who you should invite in a diverse group, it gives you a good indication of we need some diversity in here.
We have a comment by Maxime Blackburn. Not a question, but thank you for making clear to me that I'm in a support position for the core parts of the business.
I don't know if it's good for you or bad for you, but yeah, support, it does not give you any less credit. It does not make you a less of an employee, and it should definitely not affect your salary. It's just that the decision-making point is not based on your context, but something broader, bigger, or some consideration.
Yeah. It helped me understand the role I have to play. Okay.
Yeah. And I hope it will help you with happiness as a whole.
That's what we wanted to achieve, right? Okay, I don't see more questions so far. Someone is typing.
We'll wait for that question. It's a big question with a lot of words. Rich, is there an optimal mix of affinity for particular problem domains, or is just some more diversity than the most? Yeah, it's an interesting question. Yeah, I think the more diversity is the better. I cannot tell you which study showed that, but usually in when we're trying to do innovation, there's a lot of study that showed that innovation usually comes from something that is mixed with something else from another field, and then it creates something new. If you want to solve a problem based and you only have architect, the mindset will be, okay, how do we optimize the processes? That's a big stereotype. But if you have someone that is say we have the full edgy diversity, well, okay, so we want to improve and solve the problem. Someone will say like, okay, do we need to train the people? Do we need to have other people and instead of changing the technology? Or maybe it's just not the right problem. Maybe it's not our goal to improve that part. Maybe the problem is elsewhere. Or yeah, maybe we need to figure out like what do our clients actually really want. So maybe the process is good. The problem is not on the technology. So to me, that these diversity are what will make something rich. But there are some studies that are backing that diversity is equal better problem solving and innovation.
Okay.
And there's another question, and maybe after that, we move to the rest of the day. Conway's law is in this discussion as well. I'm not sure which it is Conway's law. There's so many laws and principles that my memory cannot remember them all.
Conway's law says that the system, the IT system, for example, is always a mirror of the organizational structure. So that means if you're organized in a certain way, then your IT reflects the organizational design. Yeah. So, Rich, I'm not sure exactly how you mean by echoes. So maybe you can elaborate on that. But I find this an interesting one.
I'm just Googling something quick about innovation. I think it's the one concept about innovation, how you mix stuff to innovate is the TRIZ. It's not a law, but it's give me a theory. Yeah, innovating and solving problems developed of TRIZ by the Soviet Union during the war. I need to check that out a bit more. I don't know everything on the top of my head. So yeah, maybe something connect. I'll check Jacob function language. Yeah. Okay, let me just save these little texts. Mix and I will check all of these out and continue to make that theory a bit more closer to something that is more applicable and like more grounded, and where the boundaries are more useful to figure out who we are and how it matches with everything. Rich, international diversity breaking the assertion of Conway law, I guess, was the thoughts. Yeah, most likely. Oh yeah, I think that's a wrap if everybody's agree. So then I can go to lunch. It's noon here, and I'm starting to get. I'm starving.
Okay, only 4 people left here, so why not go to lunch? I'm going to dinner here in Vienna. So thank you, Jess, for this amazing talk here. Always good to hear new ideas. And for the others, our next webinar will take place in 2 weeks from now. So please join us again. Everybody will get the recording and the slides of the session today. And if you want to stay tuned, intersection group events is the place to watch. More webinars coming up from more and more people. And yeah, looking forward to meeting many of you at one of our next events or in person in Canada, where our conference will take place in Montreal in fall. So let's meet again in the future and looking forward to that. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.